Islamic culture is a term primarily used in secular academia to describe the cultural practices common to historically Islamic people. The early forms of Muslim culture were predominantly Arab. With the rapid expansion of the Islamic empires, Muslim culture has influenced and assimilated much from the Persian, Caucasian, Bangladeshi, Turkic, Mongol, Chinese, Indian, Malay, Somali, Berber, Egyptian, Indonesian, Filipino, Greco-Roman Byzantine, Spanish, Sicilian, Balkanic and Western cultures. Islamic culture generally includes all the practices which have developed around the religion of Islam, including Qur'anic ones such as prayer and non-Qur'anic such as divisions of the world in Islam. It includes as the Bal tradition of Bengal, and facilitated the peaceful conversion of most of Bengal. There are variations in the application of Islamic beliefs in different cultures and traditions. Terminological use. Islamic culture is itself a contentious term. Muslims live in many different countries and communities, and it can be difficult to isolate points of cultural unity among Muslims. Besides their adherence to the religion of Islam, anthropologists and historians nevertheless study Islam as an aspect of and influence on culture in the regions where the religion is predominant. The noted historian of Islam, Marshall Hodgson, noted the above difficulty of religious versus secular academic usage of the words Islamic and Muslim in his three-volume work, The Venture of Islam. He proposed to resolve it by only using these terms for purely religious phenomena, and invented the term Islamicate to denote all cultural aspects of historically Muslim people. However, his distinction has not been widely adopted. Art. Public Islamic art is traditionally non-representational, except for the widespread use of plant forms, usually in varieties of the spiraling arabesque. These are often combined with Islamic calligraphy, geometric patterns in styles that are typically found in a wide variety of media, from small objects in ceramic and metalwork to large decorative schemes in tiling on the outside and inside of large buildings, including mosques. However, there is a long tradition in Islamic art of the depiction of human and animal figures, especially in painting and small anonymous relief figures as part of a decorative scheme. Almost all Persian miniatures include figures, often in large numbers, as do their equivalents in Arab, Mughal and Ottoman miniatures. But miniatures in books and Muraka albums were private works owned by the elite. Larger figures in monumental sculpture are exceptionally rare until recent times, and portraitures showing realistic representations of individuals did not develop until the late 16th century in miniature painting, especially Mughal miniatures. Manuscripts of the Quran and other sacred texts have always been strictly kept free of such figures, but there is a long tradition of the depiction of Muhammad and other religious figures in books of history and poetry. Since the 16th century, the Prophet has mostly been shown as though wearing a veil hiding his face, and many earlier miniatures were overpainted to use this convention. Depiction of animate beings. Some consider that Islam prohibits the depiction of animate beings in paintings and drawings. One possible reason for this is that it removes the risk of idol worship. Islam teaches that Allah alone should be worshipped. It also holds that banning pictures of Muhammad, the prophets, and animate beings reduces the risk that they will be worshipped in his place. However, some others argue that the depiction of animated beings is permissible if the art was not meant to be worshipped, and the creator did not intend to rival God in the creation. This is due to the hadith that mentioned the Prophet had once asked his wife to move a picture of two birds in the room in which he prays somewhere else. However, he didn't ask the picture to be destroyed. This, along with other hadiths, made some believe that pictures of animated beings that are not worshipped are to be considered heresy, is permissible. One exemption that may be mentioned is the case of the al-Buraq, white animal smaller than a mule and bigger than a donkey, which brought Muhammad from Masjid al-Haram in Mecca to Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem in The Journey by Night. Isra 17-1a. Calligraphy forbidden to paint living things and taught to revere the Quran. Islamic artists developed Arabic calligraphy into an art form. Calligraphers have long drawn from the Quran proverbs as art, using the flowing Arabic language to express the beauty they perceive in the verses of Quran. Architecture. Elements of Islamic style. Islamic architecture may be identified with the following design elements, which were inherited from the first mosque built by Muhammad in Medina, as well as from other pre-Islamic features adapted from churches and synagogues. Large courtyards often merged with the central prayer hall. Minaret towers. The oldest standing minaret in the world is the minaret of the Great Mosque of Kairouan, erected between the 8th and the 9th century. It is a majestic square tower consisting of 3 superimposed tiers of gradual size and decor. A mihrab niche on an inside wall indicating the direction to Mecca. This may have been derived from previous uses of niches for the setting of the Torah scrolls in Jewish synagogues, a merab of Persian Mithraism. Culture. The haikal of Coptic churches. Domes. Use of iwans to intermediate between different sections. Use of geometric shapes and repetitive art. Use of decorative Arabic calligraphy. Use of symmetry. Ablution fountains. Use of bright color. Focus on the interior space of a building rather than the exterior. Interpretation. Common interpretations of Islamic architecture include the following. The concept of Allah's infinite power is evoked by designs with repeating themes which suggest infinity. Human and animal forms are rarely depicted in decorative art as Allah's work is matchless. Foliage is a frequent motif but typically stylized or simplified for the same reason. Calligraphy is used to enhance the interior of a building by providing quotations from the Quran. Islamic architecture has been called the architecture of the veil because the beauty lies in the inner spaces which are not visible from the outside. Use of impressive forms such as large domes, towering minarets, and large courtyards are intended to convey power. Theatre. Whilst theatre is permitted by Islam, Islam does not allow for any performances to depict Allah, Muhammad, his companions. The angels are matters detailed in the religion that are unseen. The most popular forms of theatre in the medieval Islamic world were puppet theatre and live passion plays known as taziyah, where actors reenact episodes from Muslim history. In particular, Shia Islamic plays revolved around the Shaheed of Ali's sons Hassan ibn Ali and Hussein ibn Ali. Live secular plays were known as akraha, are recorded in medieval adab literature, though they were less common than puppetry and taziyah theatre. One of the oldest, and most enduring, forms of puppet theatre is the wayang of Indonesia. Although it narrates primarily pre-Islamic legends, it is also an important stage for Islamic epics such as the adventures of Amir Hamza. Islamic wayang is known as wayang Siddhartha wayang Manik. Karagoth. The Turkish shadow theatre has influenced puppetry widely in the region. It is thought to have passed from China by way of India. Later it was taken by the Mongols from the Chinese and transmitted to the Turkish peoples of Central Asia. Thus the art of shadow theatre was brought to Anatolia by the Turkish people emigrating from Central Asia. Other scholars claim that shadow theatre came to Anatolia in the 16th century from Egypt. The advocates of this view claim that when Yavuz Sultan Selim conquered Egypt in 1517, he saw shadow theatre performed during an ecstasy party put on in his honor. Yavuz Sultan Selim was so impressed with it that he took the puppeteer back to his palace in Istanbul. His 21-year-old son, later Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, developed an interest in the plays and watched them a great deal. ideal. Thus shadow theatre found its way into the Ottoman palaces. In other areas the style of shadow puppetry known as khayal al-zil, an intentionally metaphorical term whose meaning is best translated as shadows of the imagination or shadow of fancy, survives. This is a shadow play with live music, the accompaniment of drums, tambourines and flutes. Also, special effects, smoke, fire, thunder, rattles, squeaks, thumps, and whatever else might elicit a laugh or a shudder from his audience. In Iran, puppets are known to have existed much earlier than 1000, but initially only glove and string puppets were popular in Iran. Other genres of puppetry emerged during the Qajar era as influences from Turkey spread to the region. Hama Shabbazi is a Persian traditional puppet show which is performed in a small chamber by a musical performer and a storyteller called a Moshtanagl. These shows often take place alongside storytelling in traditional tea and coffee houses. The dialogue takes place between the morsht and the puppets. Puppetry remains very popular in Iran, the touring opera Rostam and Sohrab puppet opera being a recent example. The Royal Opera House in Muscat, Oman. It is considered to be the first opera house linking Islamic culture with classical music. Dance, gender-based rulings are evident in Islam's position on dance. Dance is permissible for women within a female-only environment and is often performed at celebrations. Dancing is prohibited for men. Again, some Sufi orders are the exception to this rule. They include the whirling dervishes who use dance as a means of worship. Music. Many Muslims are very familiar to listening to music. The classic heartland of Islam is Arabia as well as other parts of the Middle East, North Africa and Central Asia. Because Islam is a multicultural religion, the musical expression of its adherents is diverse. Arab classical music. Religious music in Iran. Hindustani classical music. Qawwali music. The Seljuk Turks, a nomadic tribe that converted to Islam, conquered Anatolia and held the Caliphate as the Ottoman Empire, also had strong influence on Islamic music. See Turkish classical music. Sub-Saharan Africa, India, and the Malay archipelago also have large Muslim populations, but these areas have had less influence than the heartland on the various traditions of Islamic music. For South India, see Mapila songs, Dufmatu. All these regions were connected by trade long before the Islamic conquests of the 7th century and later, and it is likely that musical styles traveled the same routes as trade goods. However, lacking recordings, we can only speculate as to the pre-Islamic music of these areas. Islam must have had a great influence on music, as it united vast areas under the first caliphs, and facilitated trade between distant lands. Certainly the Sufis, brotherhoods of Muslim mystics, spread the music far and wide. See articles on Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha, Ashura, Mavlid, Laylat al-Miraj and Shabi Barat. Marriage in Islam is considered to be of the utmost importance. Muhammad stated that marriage is half of religion. There are numerous hadiths lauding the importance of marriage and family. In Islam, marriage is a legal bond and social contract between a man and a woman as prompted by the Sharia. Family values. In Islam, the role of the family is very important. The Quran places great importance on respecting elders, and oftentimes, grandparents will live in the same household with the children and her children. Treating grandparents with kindness and respect comes before all else, except for the practice of tawhid, which is the worship of God. There is also the belief that a lot can be learned from having 3 generations living under the same roof. By having household members treat and assist grandparents will strengthen the bond within the family, and within oneself. Extended family also plays a crucial role. In historic times in Islamic culture, families often lived near one another. This is not necessarily true in our society today, as families may live farther away from each other due to demands in jobs and other commitments. However, the idea of a close family bond is still present in Islamic culture even with these modern changes, and family is ultimately seen as a great source of help during times of conflict within an immediate family. For example, during times of dispute between a husband and wife, immediate family members, one from each side, are called in to serve as moderators. Martial arts in Muslim countries, cultures. Muslim Chinese martial arts, variation of Chinese martial arts created by Hui people. Palavani, Turkey, a folk wrestling art from Turkey. Jaligurs, Turkey. Greece, oil wrestling, notably the martial art of Hakan. Karash, Central Asia. Folk wrestling. Istunka, Somalia, a stick fighting art, traditionally utilized axes and blades. Nuba fighting, Sudan, stick fighting and grappling art. Tatib, Egypt, a stick fighting art, traditionally utilized blades and other weapons. Lamb wrestling, Senegal, folk wrestling. Dambe, Nigeria, folk wrestling. Boli Kala, Bangladesh, folk wrestling. Lathi Kala, Bangladesh, stick fighting, traditionally used blades for Dhao Kala. Sqay, Pakistan, traditional martial art of Kashmir, practiced by India Muslims in Kashmir as well. Pencak Silat, Indonesia, gained popularity because of films featuring Ikouwais. Bhakti Negara, Indonesia. Parasidiri, Indonesia. Kuntau, Indonesia. Turung Derajat, Indonesia. Silat, Indonesia. Silat Melayu, Malaysia. Senegaung Fatani, Malaysia. Senegalyong, Malaysia. Tomoy, Malaysia. Lian Pajukan, Malaysia. Nir, Iran. Fur Izia, West Asian, practiced by Mamluks.